What I would like to do at this point in time is introduce Erica Brown, one of our BCBAs in the clinical department. She is your presenter, and Erica, take it away.
Awesome, thanks, David. It is nice, well, I can't see you guys, but it's nice that you guys are all here. And we're gonna spend some time just talking about how we can prevent challenging behaviors in this crazy time. Before we really dive in, who am I? I'm in our clinical department. I've been working with individuals with autism for about 13 years now, specifically in behavior analysis, providing ABA services both in home, in a school setting, and as well as in clinic setting. So just so you kind of know, and I've worked with little guys all the way up to adults. So I have a well-rounded experience. I'm not the expert by all means. You guys are, as I'm talking, you're going to take this information, and your loved one that you are here for, you're going to know what's going to work best for them. So just so we kind of have an idea of what today is going to look like, if I can get my PowerPoint to move on. There we go. These are our objectives. So we are going to spend some time talking about just the framework of how I look at problem behaviors and how the field of behavior analysis looks at problem behaviors, just to make sure that we are all on the same page on how we're really looking at problem behaviors and why they're occurring. And then the rest of the time, we're really going to spend a lot of time looking at evidence-based strategies that are going to help you prevent challenging behaviors. And then finally, we'll spend a little bit of time, because as much as I would say, if you do everything in this PowerPoint, there's going to be no challenging behaviors. Unfortunately, that's not super realistic. And so how can we respond to challenging behaviors when they occur so that hopefully next time a situation arises, they're less likely to occur? So again, as David said, as we go through this PowerPoint and this presentation, just ask questions in the chat box, and we'll spend some time at the end to answer your questions. So let's get started. Before we do, I know that this is hard. Right now, times are strange and weird, and we just got all this news about what school is going to look like, and we're still confused about what school really is going to look like next year. So I know that you guys are all in really hard situations, and our kids with autism and our adults with autism that we love are also feeling that as well. So work for me is on a computer, school is on a computer, social interactions are over a computer, and therapies are over a computer. So again, things look different. I know that I've had ups and downs with all of this, and I think as we go through all of that, keep that in mind, that your individual that you are here for with autism is also going through all of that as well. And then thinking about how autism is a communication disorder, you know, it affects communication. I can say that this right now is really hard. And your individual that you, again, your child may not be able to do that and communicate all the anxiety and the stress that they're feeling during this time. So as we're going through that, I want us to all keep that in mind as well, that this right now for everyone is really, really hard, and as well as our loved ones with autism. So again, before we really dive in to the meat of this, I want us to make sure we're all on the same page with what I'm talking about when I talk about behavior. Behavior is anything that we do. So it's appropriate behaviors that we want to continue. It's walking, it's talking, high fives, all of that. And I bring that up because a lot of times, and what we're really focusing on today is challenging behaviors. So those inappropriate behaviors, those things that we don't want our individuals that we love to engage in, crying, hitting, all of that. But we have to also think about appropriate behaviors, and we're not going to dive too much into that today on a replacement behavior. But that is something that we're keeping in mind, that when we're preventing challenging behaviors, we want to make sure that the individual has an alternative way to communicate their frustrations, an appropriate way to sort of communicate in that situation. So again, that's another thing we're going to keep in mind. So I just said this, that behavior is communication. When an individual engages in challenging behavior, they're communicating something to us. And it's our job, if they can't verbally communicate, or they don't have a strategy, a way to communicate at the moment, or it's really hard to communicate in that stressful situation, it's our job to sort of interpret what they're communicating with their challenging behaviors. And then hopefully we'll be able to teach them an appropriate way to communicate. But that's what we're looking at. So I'm looking at this trigger. What is causing this challenging behavior? Why are they doing it? And that is a trigger, or you may see it as an antecedent. But that is the reason why that behavior is occurring. Then we have the behavior. And again, that could be anything. That could be crying. It could be laying on the floor. It could be saying no. It's something that is communicating that, hey, I don't want this antecedent to continue. And then how we respond to the behavior. So we'll spend a little bit of time, and I could have a whole nother presentation on how we respond to challenging behaviors, and I want to touch briefly on it, but we're really going to spend our time today talking about ways that we can not avoid the trigger, not avoid that antecedent, but make it so that a challenging behavior is less likely to occur when that trigger is presented. So an example of this could be, it's time, and again, thank goodness it's summer right now, and hopefully we're all taking a little break from schoolwork right now. But thinking school is coming, you present schoolwork, whatever that may look like. Screaming occurs. Your child is saying, I don't want to do schoolwork, screaming, yelling. And then the response is you give a hug. And that may not be the appropriate response in this situation, but that's sort of how we're looking at things. We're looking at the schoolwork is what is the reason that behavior is occurring, and then the response to the behavior is what keeps the behavior going. So again, when we're looking at this, and as we're talking today, we're going to keep in mind that when our adult with autism is engaging in some type of challenging behavior, that they're communicating something to us. And it's our job to sort of figure out why they're doing that. So why are they engaging in that behavior? It can be a list of things. Traditionally, you'll see in the ABA world, these 4 things. So I want to get out of a task. So I'm presented with some type of task that I don't want to do. So it may be academics, it may be a chore, it may be sit down and play the iPad. It may be your child or adult does not like that. So they're trying to get out of a situation. Attention is another reason why you may be on a Zoom call for work. You're on this webinar right now, and you've got your attention is divided, and so maybe they're engaging in that challenging behavior so that you'll attend to them. You'll give them that attention that they're wanting. And then access to preferred things. Maybe they want the iPad right now, and so they're engaging in challenging behaviors because perhaps you denied access to that iPad, or it's not available right now. It's broken, whatever it may be. And then automatic reinforcement. I'm not going to spend a lot in today. These are self-stimulatory behaviors. They're engaging in them because they feel good. These are tricky behaviors that really working together with a team, and with all of these behaviors, we want to work with a team, but specifically this one is one that we work with a team to really figure out why they're engaging in it. Not to say that these strategies are not going to work for an automatic behavior, something that feels good, those self-stimulatory behaviors, but it's a little tricky. Those are tricky behaviors that really require a lot to look into to sort of prevent. But there's other things that could also, the child could be communicating, or your adult with autism could be communicating. Maybe the environmental stimuli is aggravating to them. So the noise is too much. There's a lot of things going on. It's chaotic. Perhaps there's a lot of verbal instructions, and this is something that I see And I've done before where I'm just asking a lot of questions, even if the person with autism is verbal. Sometimes too many verbal instructions can cause someone to shut down. Lack of structure or downtime. Again, I'm sure that probably some of, with life going on, it can't be as structured these days. You're not going out into the community as much. But for some of our individuals with autism, that is a big reason when challenging behaviors start to occur. Transitions away from preferred activities, going from that iPad to schoolwork, or coming inside from playing outside at the pool. All of those things could be a reason that an individual engages in a challenging behavior. Unexpected changes in routines, and I'm sure that this is probably happening quite a bit with our individuals with autism right now. Things are so much different than they were before. School is probably going to be in home for quite a bit. There's going to be a lot of that change and unexpected changes. And so we may see some challenging behaviors when that happens as well. And then a task is too hard. And then this often happens. We're presenting a task, and I always think if something is given to me that I don't know how to do, I don't know how to ask for help, I probably will have some challenging behaviors as well. So again, this is not every reason that an individual is engaging in challenging behaviors, but it's a big list of things that your individual with autism may be communicating when they're engaging with challenging behaviors. And again, working with someone, a behavior analyst, a teacher, to really take data, that is going to be, if you're not sure why your child is engaging in challenging behaviors, really trying to figure out what's happening before and after a challenging behavior is going to help you do that. And again, I'm not going to get into too much of that, but that's just one suggestion. If you're not really sure what your child is communicating when they're engaging in their challenging behaviors. Another thing I have to mention is what we call setting events. That right now is a huge setting event. Life is very different. We are not doing our normal things. We see a lot of people in masks now. It is very different. But these are not reasons that behaviors are occurring necessarily. They're not this isn't what a child is communicating when they engage in challenging behaviors, but these things will often be a reason that a challenging behavior may be more likely to occur. So if I don't sleep and then schoolwork is presented to me, I may be more likely to engage in a challenging behavior on that day than if I had gotten enough sleep. So other things, medicine changes in family dynamics, sickness, and again, this huge change in our routine and what normal life looks like. So again, this isn't necessarily the reason the behavior is occurring, but it really does set it up so that a behavior is more likely to occur. Okay, so we've sort of talked about the reasons that we are communicating challenging behaviors. So really the next little bit of time and what we're going to spend the next 30 minutes talking about is how we're going to prevent these challenging behaviors. So these are often called antecedent strategies because we're focusing on prevention. So we're not avoiding a challenging behavior. When I talk to parents, sometimes they're like, we're going to avoid this situation that a challenging behavior occurs in. No, we are going to present that trigger. So we're going to present schoolwork, but we're going to add things to the environment. We're going to manipulate the environment before a behavior ever occurs, and make it less likely that challenging behavior is going to occur. And I like to focus on antecedent strategies because a lot of times I've said we've got to figure out what the child is communicating to us. And sometimes we know, okay, every time I present that math worksheet, every time I present that chore, Johnny is engaging in hitting. So it's pretty clear that he's doing it to get out of that task. But other things are less clear. So if I'm focusing on preventing challenging behaviors and really adding things to the environment, presenting things in a different way, I'm going to be less likely to have to reinforce a challenging behavior. And I know nobody is trying to reinforce their child's challenging behaviors, but sometimes we do inadvertently. So we think that it's to get out of this task, and so we follow through and we do the task, and then it's still occurring. So in that situation, there's probably something else that's sort of that's helping maintain that behavior. So again, we really today are going to focus on these antecedent strategies that are before a behavior occurs. And that's key because we want to make sure that these things are happening before we ever even have a challenging behavior. And we'll talk a little bit more about what I mean with that. So the first thing, and honestly the best thing with a lot of individuals with autism, is visual supports. So visual supports help do a lot of different things. They're going to help you build structure. And so a lot of times when people hear visual supports, they automatically think a visual schedule. And yes, that is a big thing that we use with visual supports, but it's not the only visual support that is useful. And so I think it's really important that you know your child best, and visuals can be presented differently. And I'm going to show you guys a lot of examples of visuals in just a minute, and they can be very individualized. So your child may not need a schedule. That may not be needed, but I think to myself, and I have a to-do list every day. I have a calendar that I use that tells me you need to be at this webinar at 11:30. So it's not necessarily a picture schedule, a first in like you typically may see, but these are visual supports that I use and that I never will fade from using because otherwise I would be doing nothing. I don't know what I would be doing because I don't have my visual supports. So for some individuals with autism, our goal is never to fade these visual supports, but our goal is to bring these visuals so that the child can be more independent, or your adult with autism can be more independent with utilizing these visuals. But again, these visuals help you build the structure. So especially if you have a individual that downtime is really where the challenge is, a schedule may be helpful, or some type of visual. First, we're going to play with Play-Doh, then we're going to play with, play outside, and then we're going to play on the trampoline outside. So, or we're going to play on the iPad. So really structuring the day. So they help do that. We have visuals that help with transitions. So a timer. Again, not every individual with autism loves timers, and I'll show you some pictures of different timers. I've had individuals that I have worked with that the timer goes off and that, it signals that transition, and they cover their ears because it's too loud. So there's definitely a very varying types of timers that you can use, but it helps signal when something is over or how long they have with something. It can signal what's available. So if it's raining outside and your child loves to jump on the trampoline, but they can't outside because it's raining, you can have a signal, a choice board of different things that are available for them. And then again, they allow for you to pair with verbal instruction. So we'll get into this a lot more about, sort of how sometimes too much verbal may overwhelm an individual with autism. And so visuals can help you. If you're pairing your verbal instructions with a visual, then you're able to be quiet in some of these tougher situations and have them rely on the visual support rather than your verbal instructions. And again, I need to say that our goal with visual supports is that the individual is able to use these independently. So if we're having to forever and ever walk them through the visual schedule, or walk them through their to-do list or their checklist or their calendar, and they're still reliant on someone else, we need to fade our involvement. That is our goal with when I'm using visuals, so that the individual with autism is in control of their visual support. So we're teaching it at first, and then we're able to fade our presence. And then again, a lot of times that them being in control and sort of their schedule may help prevent some of these challenging behaviors too. So let's just look at a couple of different visual supports that we may have. Your child may need pictures. They may need specifically a visual schedule with pictures. And so you can see there's this visual right here that does that. You can do a written out schedule, 1, 2, 3, 4, and more of a checklist. So that you can see that there as well. These are some other examples of visuals. So the one on the left with the green and red is a signal. It signals what's available. So gamepad is not available when it's on red, but green on the computer is available. Again, with all visuals, they have to be, you can't just present it and then, all right, it needs to work. You'll have to do a little bit of work on how it's gonna, you have to teach them first to utilize it. And then again, just another example of a to-do list and a finish list that you can see here. A couple of others, again, timers. They come in many different forms. You know, my best timer that I use is on my phone, but you may need to use something that's a little more concrete. So there's all these examples on there as well. And there are a lot of good free timers now on the phone. Like you have your timer that is on your phone traditionally, but there's also some apps that are free as well that have this signal, sort of like this one in the middle of the time timer, that sort of show exactly when something is finished. A first then, so some individuals, you can do their whole day, or you can do a lot of tasks. For some individuals with autism, it just needs to be what's coming first and what's coming next. So again, our goal is that we're going to individualize the visual to each person with autism. But then again, our goal with all of this is for them to be more independent with utilizing their visual supports. All right, so our next thing, we talked about first then, and that's essentially what Grandma's Law is first then. But when you go see Grandma, she's gonna make you eat your vegetables first, and then you get that dessert. And that's exactly what this is. The work, you have to do work first, and then the fun comes. So with us, we've got, for some of us, we're gonna know what is non-preferred. So that's considered, in this situation, work. It may be academics, but for some individuals with autism, it might be play. So it might be playing with Play-Doh. It might be playing with our peers. That might be non-preferred. That might be considered work for them. So just keeping that in mind, that for this to work, the fun, the motivating item, that reinforcing item really has to be reinforcing and motivating, and utilizing what they really like. So if they have something that might be not a traditional reinforcer, you know, I've had individuals that really love like ripping things, and so I've done an appropriate box that they can rip. It has construction paper in it. It has all these, you know, anything that they can just rip up. And that is their reinforcer. So we do our play, we do our work, and then they get time to rip in this box. So it doesn't have to look, it can be untraditional is what I'm trying to say with regards to what is reinforcing for them, and use that. Make sure they know that the fun is coming. As we talk, everything is going to sort of refer back to those visual supports. So make sure that they know, first we're going to read, and then we're going to play with the iPad. And maybe you can verbally say that to them, but probably more often than not, you might need to have some kind of visual for it. So we want to make sure that they know that the work is going to end, and that this is not going to last forever, and then that the fun is coming. For some people with autism, it really might need to be you read a couple of pages and then you have the iPad. For other individuals, you can probably do a couple of tasks and then the fun comes. That's where these things are you'll have to think about your child and really see what is going to work best for them. And then the other thing is that for this to work, it's got to be contingent on completing that, whatever is considered non-preferred, that work task. So if you are given the iPad, that's your reinforcer for completing the book task, but you're giving it to them, even if they don't complete the task, it's going to be harder for them to sort of get through that task without having challenging behaviors. So it's going to take a little bit of work with regards to that and sort of figuring out what is reinforcing for them and how many tasks do they need to do before they can get that. And we want to make sure that things match up as well. So if you've made them, do reading, they've done chores, they've cleaned their room, they've done like 6 or 7 tasks, and then they get 5 minutes on the iPad. You might have some challenging behaviors next time you present that. So the work and fun need to match up as well. And again, if you've had them, read 1 page of the book and then they get the hour on the iPad, it's going to be harder for you as you sort of try to increase those tasks. So making sure that the work and fun sort of match up and sort of how you're presenting the amount of time and sort of the effort that they're getting with that. Break it down. So this sounds simple enough, but breaking it down is a big thing to prevent challenging behaviors. Oftentimes we're presenting tasks that are big tasks. So let's complete this math worksheet, or let's clean your room. Let's take a shower. Those tasks in and of themselves have lots and lots of little behaviors that we're looking for with that. So we might be more successful when we break it down. So let's do 3 math problems first. Let's clean X, Y, and Z of your room first. And then oftentimes you're going to want to shape the behavior too. So again, you're going to know your individual, that your loved one best, but making sure that we're not expecting perfect the first time we do it. So if they clean up 3 things in their room and that's better than what they did last time, awesome. Let's go for it. So again, if you presented this room to me to clean up and just said, clean your room, I probably would have a challenging behavior because that's a lot to clean. So breaking it down, let's first clean the Legos. Let's clean up the books. Let's clean up the paper. And doing it that way, making the task more manageable, easier. And then you can let's first clean the Legos and the books, and then we can take a break. And so you're utilizing, again, that visual support if you need to, grandma's law, and then breaking it down. So everything that we're sort of talking about today, I think keeping in mind, there's not just going to be one preventative strategy that you're going to use. You're probably going to use a couple of these or maybe all of these. And what's really nice about looking at behavior this way is that you can really kind of present a package of strategies that are going to be more likely that it's going to be less likely that a behavior occurs. Let's try to get to the next one. Here we go. So clear, concise directions. Keeping language simple is, I think, key. I mean, we've talked several times about how too much verbal direction can often lead to challenging behaviors. And I've given the example before. I took French in high school. I am not fluent. It has been a long time since I have spoken French. But if someone told me something probably really simply, I might be able to figure out what they're saying. If someone spoke to me in French and was trying to have a conversation with me, I would be overwhelmed and probably would not be able to understand what they're saying. And that is sometimes what I imagine that verbal directions with individuals with autism sometimes sound like to them. We're saying these long sentences, and I'm guilty of this too, especially with individuals with autism that are verbal. So again, we think, oh great, they're verbal, they can communicate, they can tell us what they need, they want, they're talking in sentences. But just because they're able to do that in situations that are tough for them, or challenging situations, or just when you are presenting directions in general, keeping it clear and concise is going to be way more successful for you and for that individual with autism. So you can see the sentence, sit down, versus go over there and sit down in the chair. You know, there's a lot of words in that last sentence that we used, and it might get confusing. Some of those things might get lost, right? And so the simpler, the better, I feel like. And I also think when we're in these situations, focusing on telling your child what you want them to do rather than always telling them what not to do. So your child is hitting, hands on the table, versus stop hitting her. A lot of times in these situations when challenging behaviors occur and you're just telling them no or stop, they don't know what else to do. So we want to be able to tell them, all right, what should you engage in? What should you do? And then again, like I said, I'm going to tie everything back into this neat bow using visuals. So again, we're going to talk a little bit later about what happens if a challenging behavior does occur, and it's going to still happen. So if you have those visuals and you're supporting things with visuals, then you will be able to sort of be quiet in that moment and just use the visual. Something I guess I should have also said, and I think this is a good time to talk about it too, is using these strategies consistently before challenging behaviors occur is key. So a lot of times, you know, okay, we're in this moment that you can see is escalating up, and then you pull out a visual support. Or you see a situation that's sort of escalating up, and then you lower your language, which you should do. You decrease the number of words. But really thinking about if we are consistently doing this before, especially with those visuals, they're going to be more effective if you're teaching them and you're utilizing them when the individual with autism isn't escalated up, isn't going to that point that we might have a challenging behavior. So if we can provide them teaching opportunities and supports throughout, even if it is okay, I know that they love to read and they can do reading, utilizing a visual on those situations that are also easy for them is going to provide really, really good teaching opportunities. Providing choices. So again, a lot of times when people hear choices, they are thinking choices on preferred items. So what do you want to work for? And yes, that is a really great choice that we want to provide. I really think providing choices is a great way to give our individuals with autism some control in situations where they might not have some control or might feel out of control. I know right now life is really out of control, and so providing them with choices on things when you can is, I think, a great way to sort of prevent some challenging behaviors from occurring. We all like to have control of our day and our life. I know when I'm given choices on work projects and trainings to do and things like that, I enjoy it much better than if I'm told, get me X, Y, and Z. So providing some choices around that is really key. So if it doesn't matter about some of these things, you know, I often say, let's pick our battles, right? If you have these, we know we need to get work done. Doesn't matter if we do reading or math first. Why don't we let our individual with autism choose that? And I know that can always happen in necessarily a classroom setting, but hopefully you can sort of, even if it isn't that, hey, do you want to do this math worksheet or this math worksheet first? So I think providing some choice and giving them some control with their day is going to be really helpful in preventing some of these challenging behaviors. So again, that's one way, the order of how tasks can be completed, the fun activity. What do you want to do? Do you want to play the iPad or watch Disney Plus? Which one do you want to do? How long should an activity last? So do you want to read for 10 minutes or do you want to read for 15 minutes? Or do you want to play on the iPad 10 minutes or do you want to play on the iPad 15 minutes? I can't tell you how many times things have gone over much better if I say, hey, you want to tell me how long you want to be? And I'll give them a choice, because sometimes it's like, I want to play the iPad for an hour. And that might not be realistic, but hey, do you want to play the iPad for 10 or 12 minutes? And then that transition off the iPad, because they got to choose how long they got to play on the iPad, was way, way better than if I just said, all right, we're going to play for 10 minutes. And then activity orders of how chores are done, activities of daily living. Do you want to sweep or do you want to clean the playroom first? So again, I think these are just a couple of examples, but as much as you can, providing some choice within your loved one's day so they have some control in their day, I think is really, really key in preventing some challenging behaviors. And again, I think oftentimes we can get into some power struggles. I know I've been guilty of it, where it's like, I've told you to do this, and that never ends well. So providing choices, I do it so much more now because I don't want to get into those situations, and it ends up working out way, way better for everyone. Again, high rates of preferred activities items. We talked about this before. We want to know what is motivating for them. So oftentimes I'm working with technicians or families, and they're like, we'll present this Play-Doh because kids love Play-Doh. And for this individual with autism, Play-Doh isn't preferred at all. It's a task demand. And so if you're seeing that your individual with autism is having challenging behaviors in some of these traditional fun activities, then it's probably not a fun activity, and you need to think about where you present it in the schedule. So yeah, we want him to play with Play-Doh. He has to do it when he goes to preschool. So put the Play-Doh first, and then something that you know is preferred. He loves to jump on the trampoline. He never has challenging behaviors unless we tell him to get off the trampoline. So Play-Doh first and then trampoline. Again, thinking about catching and being good. You hear that said in a lot of times in a classroom, and I think it also works at home as well. So if you're providing more attention on behaviors that you want to see occur, you're going to hopefully see less likely some of those challenging behaviors. So they're sitting, they're playing nicely with their brother. Oh, I love how you're playing with your brother. Great job. It can be as simple as that. A hug. You were doing so good. You know what is going to be effective for your loved one. And so these are just some examples of some things that might be, Thomas, candy, of course, high five, jumping on the trampoline. And again, we talked about those not typical things that may serve as reinforcers, like ripping paper or shakes or spins or anything like that can really be helpful if you're providing high rates of preferred items throughout the day. We start easy and then get harder. So we want to make sure we're starting with easy requests, what they're likely to complete. So we have this graph here that I'm just using to sort of show it. So we're going to clean up the kitchen. And so we're going to start easy. So we're going to start with walking to the kitchen. They do that all the time. They might have snacks there. So we're going to walk to the kitchen. You're going to say, great job walking to the kitchen. That's awesome. Then, hey, can you pick up the broom and dustpan? They might do that. They're more likely to do that. They pick it up. Awesome job. You picked up the broom and dustpan. And then we say, sweep the kitchen, the hard task that typically leads to challenging behaviors. So if you see it, you see that all of these sort of go together. It would be silly to say, walk to the kitchen, get a piece of candy, sweep the floor. All the behaviors sort of go together, and we've started with the most likely behavior to occur, and then the behavior that's more likely to lead to a challenging behavior. And it's like when you work out, you're not going to just hop on the treadmill and just take off running full speed. You're probably going to start and you're probably going to walk, and then you're going to build up momentum to run fast if you like to run on a treadmill. And then functional communication training. So providing opportunities to communicate prior to the challenging behavior to occur. And so this is what we were getting in, that again, behavior is communication. So we need to make sure that they have a way to communicate these things. So if they're always communicating through challenging behaviors that they need a break, they need to stop, that they need candy, then we've got to teach that. It may be vocal, it may be some kind of communication device, it may be some type of communication card. I have kids that are vocal, but if they need a break, I'm going to have a break card for them, because in those really tough situations, it's easier for them to point to the break card, hand me the break card, than verbally. This is one that you really want to work with a team, work with a speech therapist, work with your school to make sure that everybody's on the same page on what you're communicating, and that we're all setting up opportunities to prompt communication when we see these signs that, okay, this could go bad if we keep presenting this task over and over again. They really look like they need a break. So let's prompt a break right now before we get to the point where they've had a challenging behavior and they're going to have a break from this task because they're on the floor crying. We really want to make sure that we're getting that break, or whatever, before they have that challenging behavior. Okay, we are getting to the end, and worked out perfectly with timing. Great, we've learned all these strategies, but there are still behaviors occurring. And unfortunately, yeah, this is going to happen. As much as I would say, if you implement all these things tomorrow, your kid is never going to engage in challenging behaviors, but that's not realistic. Yes, I think, and I also think we just went through a lot of information. So I've overwhelmed you with a lot of information. So making sure that you are not going tomorrow and just doing everything. Think of one or two things that we talked about today that you think might be helpful for your individual, that your loved one, and start implementing that. So when behaviors are occurring, we want to remain calm. We want to keep verbal minimum. So again, that's why we talked about visual support. So if we shut down, it's often, if someone's arguing you with a situation, you're going to just keep escalating up and you're going to argue back. And even if it's not verbal argument, but it's a tantrum or something like that, if you are quiet, you're going to be less likely to engage in that back and forth. Give them space as safely as possible. Give them time to process and sort of, have their time, and then adjust and modify expectations. If you had in your mind that you wanted to do 30 minutes of math and you presented that first worksheet and challenging behaviors are already occurring, change your expectations. Don't get into a power struggle. Don't set yourself up for more stress than you need to, and present one problem even. Have them do that one problem, move on, and come back to it. So know that you're going to have to adjust those expectations. Wait until they're ready to engage. They'll let you know when they're ready for you to engage, when they're done with the behavior, when they're ready to learn. They'll show you and they'll let you know. And when the behavior is over, move on. I have had kids and adults with autism that like to talk about their behavior and over again. And I try to move on as quickly as possible. I'm not going to talk them through it. For some kids that might be okay. For some adults that might be okay. But oftentimes I just want to move on. I'm not going to hold it against them. I'm not going to punish them for it. I'm going to move on, and we're going to go on with our day. And redirect and distract. If you've given all of these, you're giving them space, you might have to redirect them to a situation if they're constantly talking about it. So redirect them to a new activity, a neutral activity, something that is a calming activity, and really kind of go from there. So you guys can start asking questions. I'm going to kind of tell you a few things that AVNIC is offering right now as you guys think of any questions that you may have and they kind of come through. We are currently providing some telehealth services out of our traditional applied behavior analysis services. It's this clinical response consultation. So if you have any, if you're thinking about some of this stuff and you're like, I don't know if I can implement this by myself, reach out. The Dr. Myers, our clinical director's email address is on here, and he can let you know if you might be a good fit for this. It's all done via telehealth. It's really around parent training, so there's no RBT involved. It's parent training, and we are providing a kind of a quick intervention. You guys have probably all been on our website, but we are adding things, I feel like, daily and weekly to our coronavirus page. There's a lot of different things on there, webinars, etc. We have social narratives on that page as well. And then the toolkit that I hope you guys have all seen. We also have a couple of trainings that I think you might find really interesting. There's one definitely coming up next week on July 23rd. I think David is going to put in the chat box for you guys a link to this. But it is teaching rules in this new normal. And it's going to be one of our clinical professionals doing this training along with a nurse. So kind of teaching some COVID and autism things. It sounds really interesting. So David is putting that link in the chat box for you guys to take a look at. And then also, if you are, check out our calendar. If you're not on, you probably all are on our email listserv. But there's going to be a couple of other trainings from our clinical team, as well as our autism resource specialist on telehealth in education, virtual education. So I don't have dates for those yet, but they will be in the calendar and probably coming out in an email form as well.